Call now.
Congress finally acted to guarantee health care for 9/11 victims and firefighters. This was a fight led by many public servants from New York, as well as Jon Stewart, who spoke tirelessly about the bravery of those first responders. Now, at the ceremony signing this bill into law, Donald Trump got in on the action, and he said that while he doesn't consider himself a first responder, he was down there.
Many of those affected were firefighters, police officers, and other first responders. And I was down there also. But I'm not considering myself a first responder. But I was down there. I spent a lot of time down there with you.
Fact check false. And former top Trump org exec Barbara Rez is here to break this down. She worked at the real estate company that Donald Trump also plugged when he called into a local TV news station to discuss those horrific attacks.
40 Wall Street actually was the second tallest building in downtown Manhattan, and it was actually, before the World Trade Center, was the tallest. And then when they built the World Trade Center, it became known as the second tallest, and now it's the tallest.
Barbara, good to see you again.
You too.
I play that clip not because it's a lie, and it was not that tall, but because of the portrait of the mind that on 9/11 is still plugging things on the radio. Donald Trump can't help himself when it comes to 9/11, a signal event for New Yorkers, Americans, and the world. But he does really manage to overreach here. Why is that?
He's a tremendous opportunist, and 9/11 is something that you can run with, and he has run with before, and he keeps running with. So I think he's taking advantage of the fact that he can get his name in the paper. Well, he obviously all over the paper, but it's getting, more momentum, bring up some stories, get him, talking about Trump was there at 9/11. Imagine him saying, I don't consider myself a first responder. Well, how would anyone ever consider him a first responder? It's a stupid statement. And yet, he's, that's how much involved I was. I was almost a first responder.
Yeah, have you ever heard of this term, humble brag?
No.
Humble brag is when
humble brag.
Humble brag, yeah.
Sure.
So you're bragging and then you add something in to deflect it. This is the closest Trump would come to pretending to be humble, because in saying I don't consider myself a first responder, he's injecting the ridiculous false pageantry claim that someone anywhere might have thought he was doing first responding when he was plugging his building that day.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you a little story. You got a second about.
You know what, Barbara?
Yes.
Tell us a story.
Okay. We had a tragedy in the Trump organization. There were three people, two top executives of the Atlantic City casinos and one very high-up gentleman. And they came to New York for a press conference at the Plaza. They were plugging a fight. And then they went back to Atlantic City. And the helicopter crashed and they all died. And it was a horror. I mean, it was a horror for everybody.
He writes about this in one of the books.
Well, I haven't read his books, I confess, but I will tell you this. It wasn't very long after that he was putting out the word that he was supposed to be on that plane or that helicopter, and he didn't at the last minute. He got pulled off the plane. Otherwise, he'd be dead now. A total lie.
Inserting himself into the story of people he knew, you say, and you're sure that he knew this. He knew he wasn't going to be on the plane. They died, and he inserted himself.
Yeah, he said, look, I was supposed to be on that helicopter, and look, I'm just lucky that I didn't. Making news, making himself part of the story, a very important story, and undermining the fact that three people died, just like he's undermining what happened at 9/11 by exploiting it.
And that brings us to the other piece of this, because this is such a pattern, as you say. This is not just him saying something stupid without anyone connected. We're literally showing a story we've been covering here for weeks, which is whether there was going to be funding for these people who did the valor on 9/11. He also has claimed, and I'm going to play this for you, he says he predicted Osama bin Laden. Now, you worked around him. Was he reading a lot of foreign affairs and doing counter-intel type research? Did you see a lot of that?
No.
Did you see him with, maps of the Middle East and hold on, I'm busy, Barbara. I'm looking at Afghanistan. Well, take a listen.
I was down there, and I watched our police and our firemen down on 7-Eleven, down at the World Trade Center right after it came down. Everyone who helped clear the rubble. And I was there and I watched, and I helped a little bit.
You know, Trump predicted Osama bin Laden, which actually is true. And then 2 years later, a year and a half later, he knocked down the World Trade Center.
I watched when the World Trade Center came tumbling down. And I watched in Jersey City, New Jersey, where thousands and thousands of people were cheering.
Let me go ahead and ask you an impossible question. Was it worse that he referred to it as 7-Eleven in that clip, or that he said Trump predicted Osama bin Laden?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, I think the 7-Eleven probably is the most ridiculous, because we've come to know Trump and we can understand that he might predict that he predicted. He predicted Osama bin Laden, but 7-Eleven, that's pretty bad. But yeah, again, this is seizing the moment and you know, jumping on. This is, look, I was part of this. This is first response. And now it all comes up. It's in Congress. It's a big deal. It's in all the papers. Everyone's talking about it. So he jumps on it. Oh, I was the first responder. Of course, I'm, you know, supporting this. And, you know, the fact that it went through, you know, look at me. I'm a first responder. This is great. I really appreciate what these guys are doing, and I'm part of it.
Yeah. It's ridiculous mixed with offensive. I always love you coming by.
Thanks.
Can I tell you something funny?
Sure.
We keep